Minutes as folks are joining us. But we do have ASL interpretation and Spanish interpretation, and there are instructions to join the Spanish interpretation below, and that is in Spanish for our Spanish speakers to be able to follow. Hi, folks. For people who are joining us, we are meeting this evening for the Joint Inclusion Commission's first budget engagement meeting, and this one is on public safety. On the screen, you'll see the 9 commissions who are hosting this event, and then below that we have Spanish language directions for how to join our interpretation. We are offering Spanish and ASL interpretation today.
Si necesitan servicios de interpretación al español, pueden hacer clic en el globo que está abajo de la pantalla, donde dice interpretación, y pueden seleccionar español para escuchar a la presentación en español.
Put the white table here.
Okay, and so I also just realized everyone who speaks English will actually have to choose the English button on the interpretation. Okay, can I get confirmation that folks can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So thanks everyone for joining. It's 5 after 6:30. So I am going to remove the title page because we have ASL interpreters, American Sign Language interpreters, and it works a lot better if we don't have slides right now, so we can spotlight our interpreters and see them clearly. So thanks everybody. I'm really excited to see you all join us. We're here this evening together for the first of a series of 3 Zoom meetings led by our Joint Inclusion Commissions. Our areas of focus tonight will be on public safety and what true, authentic safety should look like for us in our communities. This process is designed so that residents have the opportunity to speak directly with the City of Austin commissioners, who will then form recommendations and submit their budget priorities to City Council for the upcoming fiscal year, 2021 to 2022. And that fiscal year begins in October. So before we get into some introductions and before we set this scene, I do want to go over a few things in this age of Zoom that we all have to live in. We do request that your audio remain muted unless you're speaking. And then we're also requesting that your video remain off unless speaking, so as to make it easier to follow our ASL interpreters, who are Danny and Mark. We would really like everyone to use the chat feature. We're going to do our very best to monitor the chat and also keep stack of who's asking questions or who wants to provide feedback. This meeting is being recorded. I also want to remind everybody to speak slowly for our Spanish and ASL interpreters. Our Spanish interpreters this evening are Raquel and Elizabeth. We are going to start with some intros from our staff who are here, the Equity Office, the Budget Office, and then of course our Joint Inclusion Commissions. So I'm Amanda Hasso. I'm from the City of Austin's Equity Office. I'm also helping with our Quality of Life and Joint Inclusion Commissions to organize these events. We'll also have Brandon from the Equity Office, who's managing our technology piece. And we also have Brian, Kelly, and Rocio from our office who are in attendance as well. I'm going to pass it to Brian to give a really brief overview of what we do as an office, and then, of course, our relationship to this budget engagement work with the commissioners.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for all the community members that came out tonight for a budget engagement workshop around public safety. I'm Brian Oakes, and I'm the Chief Equity Officer for the City of Austin. And the work that we are doing with the budget around our Joint Inclusion Commission is really work that goes back to a resolution that our council passed back in 2015. We call that resolution the Equity Tool Resolution. And it was a resolution in which the city manager was directed to develop an equity assessment tool to be utilized across city departments. But also that resolution spoke about the need to have equity more centered in our budget process and expressed the desire for our city manager to begin to work with the community on integrating the budget, better decision-making as it related to equity. And so we started this work about 3 years ago with the Joint Inclusion Commissions to really bring forth more solidarity in terms of how we all work together with the populations that we are trying to serve and advocate for. And just to give you all some examples of things that I'm really proud of our progress over the years is that we've moved up our process in terms of the input that we have on the city budget. In the past, it used to be at the end of the budget process when most of the decisions have been made. We've moved that timeline up so that our commissions can actually get in budget recommendations to the city manager to help him develop the draft of his budget. So your comments, your input is really important for tonight. And I just think I'm just really excited because tonight is the first time that we've actually held a collective community engagement meeting for all of our commissioners at the same time. And they worked really hard to really collaborate and pull this together. So I'm excited to be a part of it. and thank everybody for coming tonight. Look forward to hearing from everyone too.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that intro. Michael, we have Michael Benbow from Budget. I'm not sure if we have other folks from the Budget office on here, but if so, please say hi.
Awesome. Hi, as Amanda said, my name is Michael Benbow. I'm a budget analyst with the City of Austin's Budget Office. So I wanted to give you all a quick rundown of what it is that we're going to be doing throughout the whole process and what we're really looking for. So this year, like with years in the past, the Budget Office is trying to attempt to elicit input from the community as well as from the boards and commissions specifically. And that's something that we're looking to do throughout the entire budget process and through multiple different avenues. As in previous years, the Budget Office will coordinate with the city and with city departments to review the recommendations that are passed by our boards and commissions in a formal resolution and see how we can incorporate those into the budgets that were going to be submitted to us to review with the city manager's office. So we'll be conducting our annual survey, which will kick off sometime probably in late April or early May. And that's something that we did last year. We're taking community input that we had on the survey and the tool that we used last year and implementing that into the process this year. And due to the financial constraints of COVID-19 and the 3.5% property tax cap that was passed by the legislature in the last legislative session, like we did with last budget, we're really looking to reallocate existing resources and trying to maintain and expand upon our existing programs and keeping them at consistent levels that the community is really looking for. So with these constraints in mind, we really encourage the community tonight and our boards and commissions going forward to provide feedback on efficiencies related to equity and effectiveness that the city can utilize existing resources and prioritize the finite tools that we have in place now. It's important to point out that the department budgets are due to our office on May 7th. So we're really asking the boards and commissions to submit their recommendations and get as much community input as possible no later than April 9th, so that we can make sure that the departments have enough time to incorporate them into their budgets before they submit them to us. But we're excited for another year of budget engagement with the city and all of our residents, and we're excited to be here to listen to what y'all have to say tonight.
Thank you for giving us the rundown of how our budget planning works. Now we have Becky Austin from the Commission for Women. I'm going to invite her to do some intros for our Joint Inclusion Commissions.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Becky Austin. I'm a commissioner with the Commission for Women. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm here representing the Joint Inclusion Committee, and our purpose is to advise City Council on issues pertaining to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Joint Inclusion Committee is made up of the following commissions: the Commission for Women, the LGBTQ Quality of Life Commission, the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities, the Human Rights Commission, the Commission on Immigrant Affairs, the Commission on Seniors, the Asian American Quality of Life Commission, the Hispanic Latino Quality of Life Advisory Commission, and the African American Resource Advisory Commission. We are all here tonight to represent you and your constituencies. We know this is a challenging budget year, and the city's dealing with a lot of competing issues, all going after the same budget funds. And we're here tonight to really hear from you about the most pressing issues that affect you, your families, your neighborhoods, and your coworkers, so that we can share that feedback back with City Council and with the city manager and the mayor. We're here tonight to listen to you. So this is not a back and forth conversation so much about those issues and debating them. It's really to listen and hear your feedback on the things that are impacting you and your families and your neighborhoods. That will help us better inform the city and the constituents that we work with around priorities for the budget, and not just for the budget planning cycle, but throughout the year as we do our work as commissioners. We're also here to connect with one another. Whatever your race, ethnicity, gender, orientation, age, ability, status, neighborhood, we are all part of the fabric of Austin. So tonight we are one. Your voices matter, and we want to hear from as many of you as possible tonight. So we encourage you to be a part of the conversation Whether you come off of mute and tell us what you're thinking, you share your ideas and your thoughts in the chat, or you follow up with commissioners or through other communication means after the fact. If you're listening to the replay tonight, so you heard something that intrigued you, again, use those avenues of communication to reach out to your commissioners and to the others that are represented here tonight. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Amanda.
You're muted, Amanda.
Thank you. I turned my video on, but of course I forgot to mute. So thanks, Becky. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone being here. We're talking about public safety and the ways in which we keep our community safe, particularly those residents most negatively impacted by a variety of our systems. So I'd like to invite Farah Muscadin, our Director of Police Oversight, and also Brian's also here, as you heard. He's our Chief Equity Officer, and he is serving along with Farah on our Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. So I invite Farah to just share some of our city's strategic priorities in this area.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Farah Muscadin. I'm the Director of the Office of Police Oversight. With Brian, we serve on the Reimagining Public Safety Executive Team, and we're also on the City Community Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. And so as you know, just high level kind of background, City Council passed a lot of police reform resolutions last summer, and reallocated funds from the police department budget to align with the values and the goals of our community. And so what we've been working on is implementing those changes. What recently happened last week that you may have heard of was taking out, we're calling it decoupling it, but essentially what it means is separating out the forensic lab from the police department. So it'll be its own independent department. We are currently looking at the option of doing that with 911 and also some administrative departments in the police department. You may also be aware that some of the funding that was used to purchase the hotels for our homeless community came from dollars that were reallocated from the police department. So essentially what we're looking at is broader definition of public safety, right? Public safety and policing is not synonymous. And so we're looking at other ways to ensure that our community is safe. And a lot of that came from the advocacy of many of you and those in our community. And so this is something that will take time. It's not something that happens quick, but we are committed doing just that, reimagining public safety and looking at ways to ensure that all the members of our community are safe in whatever form that means for them. So I'm happy to be here and listen to the feedback and look forward to further conversations about that. Thank you again.
Thanks, Farah. Appreciate you so much. Before I move on, for those joining us, if you can please remember to stay muted and put yourself on off video, just because we have ASL interpreters here, and it makes it a lot easier and clearer if they're able to be featured as they interpret. I also just want to remind everybody to talk as slow as possible so that our interpreters can more easily hear and understand and interpret what we're saying. So I'd also now like to invite Amanda Afifi. She's the chair of the Hispanic Latino Quality of Life Commission. I'd like her to come up and share some of the key challenges and feedback that they've been hearing from community in this area of safety.
Hi, thank you everyone for being here tonight. And I'm, really excited to hear what everyone in the community has to say regarding this topic, and even other things, that might come up while you're here if you don't have time to attend some of the other meetings and are interested in those topics as well. Just wanted to kind of throw that out there. But as far as regarding some of the concerns that we've had, back in November 2019, the Hispanic Latino Quality of Life Resource Advisory Commission had a joint meeting with APD. Chief Manley was there along with some other of the assistant chiefs. And we did hear from the community at that time and kind of made some recommendations then as far as, the over policing in communities of color, use of force, excessive use of force, the process for filing complaints against officers and kind of what consequences officers have after an incident, a lot about mental health and the response when officers go into a mental health call. And then we also kind of talked about, how officers have to be well versed in all kinds of disabilities and being able to understand how to approach different people with disabilities and understanding that, those disabilities don't mean something negative as well could be happening. But anyways, after what we heard back in November 2019, we made recommendations, and some of the recommendations we made were to, kind of really define use of force and define these things, which I know is happening through reimagining public safety. Another thing that we said is more racial equity training. And I know that's something that has also been kind of looked at is redoing the training. The police academy was delayed and it's still, being considered delayed in the future. And so some of the things that we're still hearing though, is those response to mental health. And so I know recently we did add in 911, the script, to offer mental health services and to transfer the clinicians. And that's going to take some time to, completely go into that route, and they still need a triage plan. And so, officers are going to continue to need this mental health training as well. And so this is something that we view that we keep hearing from citizens. We also keep hearing that there needs to be a lot more money on prevention and really not on a response after an incident. And so really also reimagining public safety, putting money into areas to help people who need money, need supports in order so that they don't get into a situation where a police officer is being called or being involved. An example that from the commission, from the Hispanic Latino Quality of Life is like the sobering center. If an officer pulls someone over who has been drinking, or they see someone walking around who has been drinking, instead of ticketing them, jailing them, maybe taking them to the sobering center and seeing, hey, are they at risk? Do they need supports? Or is it just a one-time incident and they need to sleep it off? And so those are just some topics that we've covered over the past few years. And I wanted to give a brief overview, and I'm really excited to hear what people have to say now, what's been working, what's not working, where do you all feel these dollars are best spent? And so thank you, everyone, and I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Thank you so much, Chair Fifi. Appreciate that input and sort of giving an overview of where we are as a community. And so we're getting to the meat of our conversation today. We have some questions for you all in case we needed some prompts around public safety, but I think a lot of y'all are very well informed and know what it is that you and your communities need. And so what we're asking for in order to help us keep the stack is for you to put your name in the chat if you would like to volunteer to speak and to say what you have to say about how you see public safety in your community, what you think your priorities are when it comes to service in our city. Also, what you think we as a city of Austin need to invest in within our communities to ensure a public safety system that works for all of us. What do you feel is missing? And so these are some of the questions we hope to explore today. I'm gonna open it up to folks. And if you wanna just put your name in the chat, so that's how I know to call on you, we can do that. We're hoping to give you at least 2 to 3 minutes of uninterrupted time to say what you would like to say and to share what you want to share with your commissioners. And also we want to know who you are. So please let us know who you are. If you feel comfortable giving us your name, where you live in the city, that all of those things that help let us know a little bit more about you. We know it's a lot different and a lot harder to connect over Zoom. I miss our in-person meetings where we actually have a chance to have a real conversation. So yes, please introduce yourself when you sign up. Thank you. And Brandon has put in some of these questions to help get the conversation started. He's put those in the chat. Also, if you don't, since it's a little bit of a smaller group, I think we can probably manage to, if you just want to come off mute and start talking, let's do it. Whatever feels the most organic for you all right now. Thanks, Robin. I see Robin Orlowski has introduced herself from the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities, and she lives in District 10. All right, someone's got to kick us off. Who wants to be the one?
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
We don't know how to work this.
We don't know how to work all of
But we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, here I go. Okay.
Your name?
My name is Armando Delgado. I live in Northeast Austin. And my question is, when we hire professionals to do a job for the city of Austin, which entitled, well, in other words, when we hire somebody from outside to come in and do a job for the city of Austin, let's take, for instance, the city manager. We trust him, the taxpayers, trust him to do a job. We trust you people, the leaders, to listen to him and let you decide as to if he's doing his job for the community. Now, we tie their hands, the police chiefs, the city manager, public works, whatever. The citizen, meanwhile, loses trust in our leaders. I, for instance, have been asking for sidewalks improvements for seniors, ADA ramps, etc., in our Northeast Austin. And no response. I called 311, they're full. I tried to stop a policeman, they can't stop because that's just a question for the citizen and they got more than what they can do, and I can understand that. So we're not supporting, our leaders are not supporting the community. So therefore, the trust in the leaders is not there. That's why we have problems in getting them out to vote, getting our people to listen to what we can do, what we cannot do. And our departments have a don't care attitude. I see that when I say a don't care attitude. You see 15 guys around one hole out there in the middle of a street, and they're all City of Austin employees, and one guy's working. Now that's, and I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but you know, it's something that you see that leads me to mistrust our leadership, beginning from the supervisor all the way to our city council. And that's the way I feel. I'm sorry, but if I was going to hire somebody, I expect him to do the job and leave him alone. If he can't do it, that's what the city council is for. Let's replace him. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that and putting yourself out here in this space and for joining us. This is exactly the kind of feedback we want to hear. I appreciate that you spent time thinking about this and wanting to convey that. We have a lot of our commissioners on here from our joint inclusion commissions. And I do want to extend the invitation to you all to just to introduce yourselves to some of our residents as they bring up some of these issues. Mr. Delgado, are you able to see the chat by any chance?
Am I what?
Some, but we don't know. I'm his wife. We don't know how to. We're new at all this. We wanted to learn so we could get in on. The only way to communicate with anybody was virtual. So we've been forced to.
We're seniors with the old school, and we're learning the computer system. And being a senior, you've seen a lot. You know, we have seen a lot and been in our 80s, and we're still able to contribute, but we don't know how and how we can help a problem. For instance, one, you pick up a trash bag, you go to a homeless site, or you go to a site, or you go to a right-of-way and pick up trash. I picked up trash. I call 311, what do you do with it? Nobody knows what to do with it. That's a poor excuse of an answer. Take it to the nearest city dump, take it to the nearest barrel that says City of Austin. They could give me an answer. Or I call my representative, my city council rep. What happened to our walk, or what happens to our city walks? We have seniors walking every day, and they have to walk out in the street because the sidewalks are unwalkable. At least an answer. Hey, we can't get to you in the next 5 years. Fine, I can accept that. Or I can't get to you, but we deserve an answer. So every time the taxes come around, we pay it. And I think we deserve something better than a no or I don't know.
I appreciate that. Do you happen to know which council district you're in?
Four.
Okay, so Council Member Casar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
District 4.
Thank you. I do know we have some commissioners on seniors here in case you all had anything to add. I know the chat can be a little hard to follow sometimes.
Hey, Amanda, this is Kirk. Janie put some really good information in the chat. I don't think Mr. Delgado could see that. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but Janie, I think, could you just mention to him your comment in the chat?
Yes, thanks, Kirk, absolutely. Hi, Mr. Delgado. My name is Janie Briesmeister. I am the chair of the Commission on Seniors, and we've got about 4 or 5 other members of the commission on this meeting, including the District 4 representative. And so we are very concerned about the issues that you've raised. What I put in the chat was we were talking about sidewalks just at our last meeting with the city department. So if you're able to use the chat and you could give me some more detail about the area that, excuse me, that you're talking about, or if you'd just like to tell me right now, we will definitely follow up on that and with the District 4 office, because we hear about sidewalks a lot from seniors, and we follow up on this issue quite diligently. And,
The-
and about anything else that you have any questions or comments about, please do reach out to our commission. We take public comment at every meeting, and all of our email addresses are online.
How can you reach them? How can you reach them?
How can we reach you all? I mean, who do we call? You know, they tell us we're here to help you, and then you call and nobody's there to, not even to answer or that type of thing.
Well, do you know how to find the city boards and commissions online? Because my phone number's there, and email. I hesitate to give you my email just orally because my name is very long and hard to spell.
Would you give?
Oh, here, Tabitha, here, call this number. Can you take down this phone number? This is our age-friendly coordinator for the city, 512-972-5023. That's 512-972-5023.
Gotcha.
And that phone number goes to the city's age-friendly coordinator. And her name is Tabitha Taylor, and she can get you directed to the right place for any question that you have.
Yes, one of the big things that we have is safety. Safety is probably the number one thing that we all care about. But in our Northeast Austin, well, right behind Dobie off of Runbird Lane, we have good people. There's good people there. They just don't know the little laws like don't park in front of our fire hydrant, don't park on the sidewalks or things like that, that prevents a senior from getting off the road and being able to do their exercise, at least on the sidewalk or where the area where the sidewalk should be. And that's what I was trying to get to my city councilman or reps, that at least come out and do a little walk of the area and you see for yourself. It's not that the complaint is always there. We're never going to be satisfying everybody, but we can try to do something that the people in the area or neighborhood can learn how to trust leadership. Once you trust leadership, I'm old school. Your man's word, that's it. And it's a simple yes or no, or maybe so, or maybe we can, or maybe we can't. But there's not money available. I can understand all those questions. At least an answer would be satisfactory for the people that, I don't say I represent people, but a lot of people look at us as active seniors for answers. And if you can't give them an answer and try to pick up the trust that we need to have in our leadership, I'm sorry for well, I guess I come out negative or I come out in a wrong way, but that's my feeling. My whole thing is just to be safe. A long time ago, I learned that if I see a policeman in the neighborhood, it makes us feel better. And then I heard that from another senior. Then I heard that from a little boy. Then I heard that from a young couple. Those things make people feel at ease, because sometimes we know we could see a policeman just riding through the neighborhood saying hi. Nothing wrong with that. So anyway, so much for my.
I really appreciate that, Mr. Delgado. And if you're okay with it, I would like our equity office to be in touch with you directly to explore some of what you're experiencing. And I do.
Mr. Delgado, I just want to pop in here real quickly. My name is Diana Spain, and I'm the commissioner for District 4 on the Commission on Seniors. And if you can get your specific information through that number that our chair gave you, I'd be happy to try and talk directly to Councilmember Cassar's office about your concerns, since I'm in your district.
Thank you so much.
I'll be
That's
happy
the
to
best
do that,
answer I've
sir.
had in a year. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Just yeah, just be sure and call that number so we can have your contact information, and I'll try and make the connection or help make the connection. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So glad you're here and giving us your feedback. It's very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. I'm looking at the chat, and the next resident name I see is Paula Silvestre. Would you like to share, or do you want us to just document what you have from the chat? Okay, thank you. I see in the chat. So we'll keep this chat too. We're recording the chat. The next person I see is Monica Guzman.
Hi, I'm Monica Guzman, Policy Director at GAVA Go Austin Vamos Austin. I'm also a task force member. Sorry, forgot, I need to slow down. My apologies. I am a member of the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. So and I live in District 4, if there's any resident who, wants to talk to me, they're welcome to reach out to me. But as a task force member, I'd like to share what I have shared in our meetings, both the task force and other venues, is that when we're thinking about public safety, we need to think holistically, because it's not always about law enforcement. Some people, it could be about whether or not their house is going to stay structurally sound around them. I used to be a tenant organizer a few years back. People were more concerned about their landlord doing repairs. That was their public safety. Residents in Dove Springs in Southeast Austin, it's about flood mitigation. So I think thinking broadly, and I'm not discounting anybody's, police department or law enforcement issues. I just think it would be helpful to think broadly when thinking about public safety. Thank you.
That's why it's open for everybody to.
Thanks, Monica.
Area.
The next resident from the public who isn't a commissioner I see is Casey Smith.
Well, I have a toddler very nearby, so I think just sticking to what's in the chat would be helpful. But I will say, I guess if I have a second, I did reach out to Travis County Sheriff's Department as well as our police oversight team, and that both responded really quickly, because I'd asked this question earlier this summer about de-escalation training as a part of our mandate and expectations. And Travis County, the Sheriff's Department did not have it as part of their code, but said their leadership had all been through it. But I didn't understand that it was kind of like an expectation. And after the guidance from our Austin Police Oversight Commission committee office, excuse me, I was guided to speak put the inquiry in directly with the chief, and I didn't actually hear back. And I know it was a super busy time this summer and lots going on, so I'm not faulting for that, but I never quite got clarity whether de-escalation training is a part of our regular practices. I didn't see it in the code, but it's a very long document and I very possibly missed it. But I guess that's my recommendation, is I think if we could make that a part of not just a regular practice and ongoing training of de-escalation, but really intentionally putting it in our language and like in our policies, that would be a recommendation I have. And now I will mute. Thank you for having this opportunity to put in a request, though. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Casey. Thanks for being here. And I am going to go back and read what was in the chat. We have a comment saying, I like having mental health personnel to respond to 911 calls as the first step. This is the start of prevention instead of intervention. Higher education and employment levels are associated with lower crime rates. We need to make sure our communities get access to pathways to careers and education. And I'll read some other ones too for folks. Let's see. The city needs to sorry, y'all. The city needs to understand it has a very large disability population and that the disability community is a part of the city's history. The city previously had to pay out money for a 2010 incident with a deaf woman. I'm assuming that was a lawsuit against the city. An additional comment was that I have been ticketed for an epileptic seizure while walking in 2009, and I was asked to learn how to drive, even though that was against state law. Okay, and then Ricardo Gare. COVID-19 has made it clear that investment in public health is public safety. Community health workers should be hired from communities most affected by historical and present disparities. Do we have other folks who would like to join us in this conversation? And just a reminder, some of the questions we're exploring today are, when you think of public safety, what are your priorities? What do you think of? What do we as a city need to invest in within our community to ensure a public safety system that works for all of us? Also, what kinds of public safety resources do you feel are missing from our communities? Do any of our commissioners have other questions they want to explore with this group? I welcome you all to jump in.
This is Vince Cabalas with the Asian American Quality of Life Commission. And my concern is that a lot of people could be facing evictions after the moratorium on evictions eases. People still will have rent due, and I'm worried about there being a big impact on public safety and people in the streets.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge issue. Thanks for bringing that up. I see a comment from Carl. Would you like to speak it into existence, or would you like me to read it out? Okay, I'll read it. So one thing oh, go ahead.
Okay, am I unmuted? Oh, never mind.
I hear you. Let me mute myself.
I think it's because.
Now say it.
Okay.
The telephone.
Can you hear me?
Speak up so they can hear you, Carl.
Can they hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, I was going to say one thing that could increase community engagement is training folks that are on the other side of the digital divide how to use the internet and communicate or access city services. Is the city planning to assist organizations such as Austin Freenet that train people how to use computers and the internet? Digital literacy is becoming increasingly important as we are forced to stay home because of the pandemic. So I'd like to see more city funds directed to that effort.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think about that even right now, we're all heavily, this group, you know, we're having to rely on Zoom, but we know that we're not reaching the folks who are most negatively impacted by COVID, by the digital divide, by all of the things that we are relying on right now. Let me see some of the other things that that have come up in the chat. So the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities has asked for increased ASL proficiency. We have Daniela Silva, if you would like to expand. You said the public is safest when everyone is given clean water, healthy food, and stable shelter. Robin Orlowski from the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities. Comprehensive, affordable, and accessible public transit routes would be very important. Agreed. Robin, do you want to speak a little bit? I know you have shared a lot with us in the chat. You're more than welcome to unmute.
Well, myself and several other people who can't drive, we see, yes, there is tremendous housing going up in the city, but we're limited in where we can live. Whenever I move to a city, whenever I look for a job, I have to look and see, can I get to it? Can I get to and from it? I can't go everywhere I would like. I have to find a way to access it. This pandemic, I don't like everybody getting sick and dying, but it's been, the flip side of it is I don't have to worry about accessing places. All the housing being built in Austin, I won't necessarily be able to access it if there's no public transit. Like I said with the police, I legally can't drive because I have epilepsy. And that's why I would like, that's why you need to consider ableism as a serious issue. Also, very large, Austin has a very large population of people who are blind, because again, people who are blind legally cannot drive. DPS will not give them a driver's license. Again, you cannot go certain places if public transit does not go there. Uber and Lyft have caused problems for people with disabilities, and this is a serious component of social justice that does need to be addressed by the city. If people can't go certain places, how are they going to live? How are they going to function? Then yes, the city is segregated if people can't go certain places, even if it's not immediately apparent.
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate you bringing that perspective. The next person I see on here is Ricardo Gare. Would you like to expand a little bit on what you brought into the chat?
Yes, thank you, Amanda. I would really just want to advocate to make sure that the city rethinks the way internet access is being discussed. I believe that at this time in Austin, internet we should have public access in the same way that we're expecting folks to access these programs for assistance for education. And I really do feel that there is a time where I believe the city explored the possibility of having citywide internet, free internet. I don't know what happened with that project, so I would really love to learn more about that history and why that did not take place. But I would really feel that it's time to advocate from a city level to make sure that there's citywide access to provide, again, to Carl's point, also that access to folks that typically cannot, get informed.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Daniela, if you want to jump in, please do. I think you have a question in here. You asked, how long does APD have to do training? Police officers should be required to take at least 4 years of educational training. Lawyers have to take 8 years of schooling to learn the law, yet those who are hired to enforce it don't even have a fraction of that training. How does that make sense? Thank you for bringing that in. And just a reminder, we're recording the chat also, so commissioners will receive what you have entered into the chat. Nadia, we have, okay, you have a comment in here. Some requests. Transparency with budget spending related to public safety. It is hard to know what is being done without knowing the budget. There are a huge amount of new developments being built, and our neighborhood in 78723 is very concerned about the increased traffic and speed on Springdale Road. De-escalation as a first strategy for police officers, not criminalizing homeless individuals, and mental health professionals as first responders in a mental health crisis. I appreciate that. I love that folks are contributing even if they're not able to unmute right now. Monica, what Ricardo is referring to was about 15 years ago. I too would like to know what happened to it. I believe the link below is about it. And is this, and this is in reference to a promise for Wi-Fi and broadband access in Austin. Is that correct?
Not a promise. It was an actual project that did get started, and it was more focused around downtown, maybe just a little bit beyond downtown. So at that time, I lived maybe about a mile east of the interstate. So that was like on the edge of it, just to give you some proximity to downtown. It was hit or miss. I learned about it while it was still available, but I could almost never get it. I don't know if it was lack of funding, lack of effort, but they actually did get something going. I don't know what happened to it.
That's something we should investigate. I don't know if anyone on this call has any other insight into that. I see that Paula added something, that the broadband internet is coming with an exclamation point. There is a lot of movement in the 87th legislative session, and several groups are mobilizing to bring available federal funding. The governor's emergency has an item on increasing broadband access, and there are several bills filed. Okay, that's at the state level, so we should follow some of that. We have Jasmine in the chat. I'd advocate for reduced funding for APD and or the police. As a disabled queer person of color, I'm more often threatened harm than help by APD, i.e. white cisgender people threatening to call cops on me when I'm not acting in a way they deem correct. I also fully believe in universal basic income, investment in public health, and prioritizing affordable and low income right to stay and right to return housing for Native Austinites as things that will increase safety in Austin. And Jasmine, please feel free to come off mute if you would like to add anything or expand on that.
Hey, yeah. Oh, it's pretty dark in my apartment, I realize. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I was just only able to join, so if any of these things have been said before, sorry. I would, yeah, I think as someone, Vince Caballos maybe mentioned that, you know, the eviction moratorium is going to come to an end soon, etc. I feel like there are many things affecting folks financially right now, given the pandemic, and even before the pandemic. So universal basic income would really, I think, help folks support themselves. Research has shown that it decreases crime. And what was the other thing that I said in there? I feel like there are a lot of things that play into safety, and I believe that funding is there from the APD budget. I feel like APD is grossly overfunded, and things like public health are grossly underfunded, as we've seen in the pandemic. We could be offering more services to folks if the funding were there right now. I also believe that, yeah, affordable and low income right to stay and right to return housing for Native Austinites does increase safety in that these folks are tied to the community. You know, they're from here, they want to stay here, they belong here, etc. And I don't mean to speak to these folks, but just from my experience, and as someone who is not from here, and I think that having folks who are deeply invested in the community also increases safety versus, you know, more transient kind of like tech folks, etc., in and out. I don't believe that really helps make our city safer in a way, or more community oriented. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that community equals safety in a lot of ways. But yeah, but that is just my ramble. I think bottom line is that we have a lot of funding in the APD budget to potentially fund social services that are gonna strengthen community and offer a lot of things that folks aren't getting right now, that would help to decrease on quote unquote crime. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine, so much for joining us. We also have in the chat that Kirk from the Asian American Quality of Life Advisory Commission says, it was brought to our attention during the census outreach that there are issues in the Runberg area accessing Wi-Fi and devices necessary for remote work and school. Please let me know if there are any other issues that you would like to collaborate on this issue. So this is from Kirk Yoshida, representing from the Asian American Quality of Life Advisory Commission, a topic area that they are focusing on. We have another comment. There needs to be more access to health and mental health services, especially bilingual services. We need more funding for early childhood services too. Monica, in response to Kirk's comment in the chat, she says, I live in the Runberg area, and even as a person of privilege, I often have internet access issues. It is worse for the vulnerable communities in Runberg. And we have Zenobia, who is responding to Robin, who spoke a little earlier about transit concerns. Zenobia has a question. Is the city of Austin utilizing the state's 24/7 support line with APD, or is option 4 in 911 the mental health investment just during the day? On February 1st, 2021, Governor Abbott's State of the Address noted, during the pandemic, we created a 24/7 mental health support line, providing crisis counseling and established virtual access for behavioral services. They were funded by the almost $8 billion that the legislature devoted to mental health last session. No need to reinvent the wheel, Zenobia says. Thanks. If Zenobia, if you're still here, if you wanted to expand or add, feel free. Okay. Ricardo says, oh, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to ask you if the comments that are in the form when we register, if you will take those and archive them as well. So that's part of the reason why I just listened. But I did just want to say thank you to Robin. She often would testify before Capital Metro. I won't go off on a tangent tonight. Most people know that I'm the transit guru here, but I just wanted to say what part of the problem is that the city wants us to believe that Project Connect is going to get people to work. And those of us who ride the bus know that there are areas of town, as Robin mentioned, that simply don't have transportation. And so I think we have to recognize that whether it's Dessau or Howard, Palmer Lane is one I use often. It's just one of those things whereby there is no transportation there. And so it's all interrelated. It's related to housing as well. I was trying to just stick to, the safety issue, but I think there is a point to be made about when you know your neighbors, you feel a little bit safer. And I've just analyzed, part of the problem is that when you get west of Loop 1, it's 80% area median family income, even with the mayor's fund that he created. And when you look at the amount of money that African Americans and Hispanics make, they barely make 80% area median family income. So we're just creating these pockets of poverty. And I could be elaborate. I'll just use Highland as I mentioned today when I testified. The developer there actually said he didn't want lower income individuals there. But who goes to Austin Community College? And so if you have Black and brown people there and you have the streets named after African Americans, you have to wonder, why would the Housing Authority of the City of Austin not invest in lower income housing as opposed to 80%? So I just think that there's a broader issue here. Part of it is transit, part of it is housing, and it's all related to safety. I think the investment needs to be made specifically for transit, and I'll just put out my figure here. It's $4.7 million for the Metro Rapid that would run on Palmer between Samsung and Apple. And just as a point of reference, the 2014 Project Connect study, North Corridor locally preferred alternative actually said that the job growth would be in the North Corridor through 2035. And so I just think we need to hold the City Council responsible for the studies that are created that show where the job growth is, and then ask for the funding to invest in transportation respectfully. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Zenobia. I appreciate that, bringing the intersections into our conversations about safety.
I do want to add on to what Zenobia said. I've lived in Dallas, I've lived in Houston, and it just seems really odd that here we have areas where there's schooling, there's social services, there's medical facilities where low-income people such as the North Central Community Care facility that had transit stops, transit routes cut. That doesn't seem right. And the transit access needs to be restored. There's a reason why that clinic was planned there. There were multiple transit routes. Most of those people also they don't have cars, they can't afford them. And that our transit agency shouldn't have been excited about removing multiple transit routes or cutting it in half. That's intersectionality right there.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate the context. And Zenobia, to clarify on your first question, yes, in the registration that folks filled out to receive the Zoom link to join these forums, we are recording the answers you provided there, and that is just another way that we are collecting feedback. So even if you prefer to listen or just contribute via chat. We're just trying to provide a variety of different forums for people to participate. So yes, those responses will be delivered to commissioners. We have another comment. Predatory lending should also be addressed. Many of these payday loan companies have taken advantage of people in need, especially during the pandemic. Universal basic income could address this issue. Financial stability is public safety. And then we had an agreement in the chat as well. So again, if there are folks in the audience who maybe have just joined us or are getting caught up on the conversation, if you want to add anything, to speak directly to commissioners, we're talking a bit about what public safety should look like for you in Austin, and what we as a city need to invest in within our communities to ensure that we are all safe. And what is missing? What do we need to focus our attention on?
Are you wanting someone to speak?
Yeah, I was giving a little space for folks to think about those questions, think about why they joined tonight, and we have this direct line to commissioners right now. So what does it look like to think about safety in our communities, and what is missing from that? What would make us feel safer, especially for those who are the most negatively directly impacted by the variety of systems that you all have brought into the conversation today.
Something else to think about? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what really was on my mind is the homeless issue, because that was before council today. I know Monica spoke and a few other people did as well. And I think what's problematic is when you look at housing and you think about the developers in the downtown area and the domain pay a fee in lieu of building affordable housing. And then you have the developer, as I mentioned before, at Highland that doesn't want low-income residents there. And then you have the 80% area median family income in Northwest Austin, and you have very few affordable housing units west of Loop 1. You then start to see that they're pushed into a certain area, and much of that space is actually Northeast Austin. And I mentioned this when I testified, not to say that everyone was listening, but literally next to McBee Elementary, which is on Breaker Lane, adjacent to it will be 215 units on 2 acres, and then another 215 units on 1.98 acres. That's over 400 units adjacent to the school. This is about 93% Hispanic students, but they're students nonetheless. And when you think about safety, I think about sexual predators, and not only them, but the safety of the kids. And so you had this outpouring of support for people in Northwest Austin, but who is outraged about 400 units being built on Kramer right there in District 4 next to the school? And not only that, but just last week, Councilmember Poole actually put forth an amendment for Breaker and North Lamar area for Juniper. So when you're talking about public safety, that's like 500 people within about 200 miles of 2 schools. And so I don't really know what more to say about it, other than if 215 units times 2 is not enough to outrage people, I don't see how we can think it's equitable to get in an uproar over 83 units in Northwest Austin or in other parts of town. It's so unfair. So I think that we have to look at a map. I would just recommend the commissioners get an overlay of where the housing units are, and then take a look at where there's a need. And I would say to council, the people in District 4, that's Casar who put those units there. And that to me is inequitable. And so it's a safety concern that I have for the kids that are there and for the residents as well. Yeah, it's just inequitable. And I don't know, that's really what has me most upset, is because there's not been an uproar. And not only that, but on Rutland, where the bus was eliminated, they have been using the buses that are eliminated to build these permanent supportive housing units. And 240 Rutland is gone. But what they have done instead is use what's called a flyer, those buses that run 2 routes in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. And because there's a bus stop there, council is still justifying putting these affordable housing units where people will have to walk. And I'll lastly just give you this one. Right at Loop 1 on Palmer, just on the other side, on the west side, yes, there's affordable housing that will be there, about 80 units. But there's no bus because it's been eliminated, but there's a flyer. And because of the flyer, they've been able to justify these low-income housing tax credits. So I would just tell you, you probably need a, a little briefing on how they're doing these low-income housing tax credits, but a map, the overlay would be a good place to start. So thank you for allowing me to add that.
Thank you, Zenobia. I was going to, and there's some chat in there for folks who wanna know more about what you shared. I was gonna say that because our budget folks have informed us that we're looking at reallocation, I just wanted to make sure community folks knew that that's helpful too, right? Like, where are the places? And there was a comment too about seeing the actual whole APD budget or public safety budget, right? Just that we have a website, Reimagining Public Safety. The City of Austin has one that has the budget on there, the public safety budget, if you're interested. And just wanted to, make sure folks knew that you can also talk about where you'd like to see